Welcome, Champlain College Wave Riders. My name is Dr. Kimberly Quinn, and I have the pleasure of being with Dr. Tom Myers on this gorgeous day on Champlain's campus to have an incredibly important conversation on spirituality, which is in partnership with Columbia University Teachers College and the Templeton Foundation, specifically the collaborative with spirituality education. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Kim. It's great to be here.
So Tom, you and I have, of course, had so many chats about this as well, of course, friends, but also as professors and researchers. Tell me why, specifically with our college students, our young adult college students, why is this conversation about spirituality so incredibly important to have right now?
Yeah, thanks, Kim. And again, it's great to be here. I think we're at a turning point in many young people's lives when we're at a questioning time, a period of what is out there. And coming out of this worldwide pandemic over the past almost 3 years, it's created a sense of isolation and loneliness among so many young people. So many young people who are no longer, or throughout the pandemic, hadn't come to classes and hadn't been in, the various sports and other activity events outside of school where they could congregate. So I think there's a feeling of loneliness and a feeling of maybe abandonment in many ways. So we're looking at those areas of what is spirituality, and we can define that as well. But it's thinking about being part of a larger world, being part of an understanding that you're not alone, understanding that there is, a vast, infinite universe there with power, and that young people today, specifically when we're faced with those areas of anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicide instances. And again, one statistic I heard is that for young people, the incidence of suicide is equivalent to automobile accidents. So it's a really devastating period. So long-winded answer of the spirituality piece is to have something that's bigger than yourself, a belief that's in a universe that's larger than yourself, and we believe is a benevolent higher power, or benevolent higher self, however you want to define that, that is there to help support and buoy you up, and buoy young people up and understand that they aren't alone and that they're part of a larger whole.
Well, I think this whole idea is just fantastic, Tom. And I'll tell you, from being in the trenches myself right now with my wonderful young adults, I hear it literally daily. The anxiety talk and the depression talk and all the what if thinking and all the catastrophizing and all the overwhelm. And and you and I have had this talk before. I mean, we know that this is also currently the most anxious and depressed generation of young adults the United States has ever seen anyway. That was pre-pandemic. And I was just reading recently that it's gone up since the pandemic by 30%. That's huge.
Yes.
Huge. And so for me, and just see what you think about this, I personally, we're not talking about, we're not labeling it, right? You and I, like, whether it's God for you, source with a capital S, higher power, universe, whatever, but a benevolent higher power. I just can't imagine, with all the overwhelm they're talking about and all the political stuff going on, all the stuff, taking that and having it only on their own shoulders. I mean, it's kind of no wonder there's so much anxiety. Do you know what I mean? You want to maybe comment on that?
Yeah, I think if you think about taking this, as you said, Kim, on your own shoulders, and I think we as humans are impelled to want to do things or have control over all aspects of our lives, and I'm gonna make something happen myself, and it's gonna be all on my shoulders, and I'm gonna make that happen. And I think that over the course of the years, with the skyrocketing areas with social media and that lack of interconnectedness and that feeling of that the self-worth of individuals has really plummeted. You wonder, what else is out there? And when you get to the point where you feel that you cannot do it on your own, and it's not going to be by yourself. Unfortunately, with this, it's become very transactional in relationships as opposed to a deep, loving, kind-hearted relationship with one another. It's become more transactional. Transactional, transposing that onto achievement, is that I gotta get things done. I gotta get one thing after another, and if I'm not achieving, I'm going backwards and I'm failing. So the spirituality piece is, as you said earlier, is that this feeling of a benevolent, kind universe. And however you define, we'll talk a little bit about religion and spirituality, but to feel that there is an awareness of something larger than yourself that is looking out for your best interest.
And also helping, see what you think about this, Tom, helping with, you had me before about, just everything that these young adults are dealing with. And, as I know you're aware, the average teen young adult is on a screen 8 to 9 hours per day, not counting work or homework, right? That's times 7 days in a week is more than a full-time job. So these sort of imminent or immediate social comparison, the phone goes up, beep, buzzes, notification. There's immediate comparison with so-and-so's in a relationship, so-and-so's at that party that I wasn't invited to, so-and-so got into graduate school, so-and-so got an internship, so-and-so got their first job, whatever. And that social comparison theory, I believe, was Leon Festinger, 1951. It's amazing that still holds true today. And I can't imagine having all that influx of self-comparison and think of the negative internal dialogue going on, and then not having that strong inner life, if you want to call it that, strong inner spiritual life. I can't imagine just getting bludgeoned with all those messages all day long. And then wake up and do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and so when I heard wonderful quote a few years ago, it's like, on social media, say, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever it might be, is that you see others, on their very best day when you're on having your very worst day. So talk about, those extremes of seeing someone on vacation on a beach in a beautiful, location in a tropical island, and I'm sitting here in my basement in, northern United States and cold tundra. Again, that reflection of self-worth is immediate. And that's another product of social media. How do you use social media in a way that is beneficial to you, but in moderation? And in layering that, as we talk about the spiritual focus, is there is something there out there for me, with my friends and with my family and with my, my beliefs and strong beliefs of my self-worth. I have that as a foundation.
Because, you and I as professors and researchers, and just currently in the trenches, I overhear them too, saying different things. And I wonder, I'm sort of wondering what your opinion is on why it seems like there's almost a spiritual crisis among college students, young adults.
Yeah, and I think
true,
it's a bit of escapism. It's a bit of kind of not being able to face the current strife and issues that are going on in your life today. But I think I go back to what I said earlier, is this foundation of having a strong foundation with a spiritual focus. So the one thing we want to kind of clarify, too, on the spiritual side, is that when we say spirituality, it does not necessarily mean religion. And that's what so often in my educational experience, when you talk about spirituality, immediately people go to, I was raised in this church, or I was raised in this faith. I no longer want that. I no longer believe in that, So in the United States, 2/3 of the population has a strong spiritual sense that is coupled with a religious faith background. So that, and then there are, again, folks who are interesting atheists, but then can have a spiritual focus, right? You can believe in something that, again, an energy or whatever that might be in the universe doesn't have to be necessarily defined as a god. But so there is a 1/3 of a population that has a strong spiritual sense. And as you said earlier, Kim, nature, or the universe, or, sometimes people say nature, or maybe you say this is your cathedral. Again, to walk in nature that can have the same benefits. So spirituality, in this sense, can or may not include an organized faith-based religion.
So it may, but it may, or you can
Absolutely.
overlap, right?
And
you can be, let's say, Catholic
Absolutely.
or Muslim or whatever.
Absolutely.
And have a very spiritual inner life. And I know that, how much I love Oprah.
Yeah.
She talks about the way she uses God, but she talks a lot about, she uses the word strong inner life, because we really win from within, right? Instead of trying to find our solutions and our approval outside of us, when we bring that stuff inside is when we really start to have some of these things dissipate, like the anxiety and the depression and things like that. And I believe, you and I were doing a lot of talking about Lisa Miller's work with, the awakened brain, right? And you might maybe correct me here if I'm off by a couple of percentage points, but I believe she talks about depression and spirituality as being two sides of the same coin. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
And it serves as a protector, strong inner life, regardless of how you label it. A strong inner spiritual life serves as a pretty significant protector against depression.
Yes. Yep. Depression, anxiety, and substance abuse. Now, you're the neuroscientist here. So you talk about, and Dr. Lisa Miller's work in the awakened brain of the brain scans, and look at the cortical parts of the brain, which in fact, in a higher spiritual focus, and her research looked at those with a medium, low, or no spiritual orientation versus those participants who had a high spiritual focus, and looked at the brain scans and MRI brain scans of the different cortexes, and seeing what is lighting up, again, when in crisis or when in prayer or what have you, that in fact the neuro makeup of the brain, these cortexes can actually become harder and more resilient. So it is an incredible, again, doesn't prevent depression, anxiety, but it is a safeguard to help protect, and in turn recover when different incidences.
Become more resilient.
More resilient.
More resilient to life's curveballs. But it's interesting too, Tom, because you and I were talking about it earlier. Of course, poor twins. Everybody wants to study twins, right? To see. Well, there was
ideal.
It was was it Kendall? I think 1,902 sets of twins, and found that because we want to study them because of the genes, obviously, right? Now I was surprised. Only 29, because genetics are so strong, right? Only 29% of our actual spiritual component and the inner life is genetic. So the other 71% means it's what we do with it. It's environment. It's what we seek out. It's the sunsets. It's the mountains. It's going to church if that's for you. It's running. It's skiing. It's conversations. It's being part of groups that talk about higher powers. It's 12-step recovery programs, all that stuff. So 71%, I mean, that's very close to 3/4 that we have control of.
Yeah.
So tell us about that, specifically with the higher ed situation. Maybe.
Yeah, and what's interesting too, I just want to kind of riff off that a little bit. That from a physiological standpoint, we as human beings, 1/3 of our brain is innately designed for spirituality. However you define that.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So it's not as though this is unique just to culture and just to how your upbringing, your demographic. Physiologically, we as human beings are predetermined, pre-designed for a spiritual awareness. And so that's it's not something that you're just going to acquire. So it's part of our brain. And how often have we heard people talk about mind, body, spirit?
Right.
Mind, body, spirit balance, right? why are you saying spirit? There is, is that larger sense. The other thing I wanted to go back to, and we kind of glossed over quickly, is back to the benefit of faith-based organization or religion.
Mm-hmm.
So we as individuals, but I think the beauty of having an organization that you belong to, be it a church, a synagogue, mosque, whatever type of faith-based organization or physical place, it brings people together. And it brings people together in community to share, both, share in faith and in worship. And that's something to know. I mean, however you were raised or whatever you believe in, to feel that someone is thinking about you or in cases praying for you. And again, the health benefits and the mental health benefits that go associated with this belonging and belief with someone who is caring for me.
Oh, totally. That's 100%. Like that famous Harvard study, the longitudinal study has been going on since the early 1900s, is relationships is the number one. And if you bring that then into a community that has a spirituality component, and when we know that for a fact, right? It's been, demonstrated over and over again. I wanted to ask you something else, Tom. We were talking about the depression and spirituality being two sides of the same coin. I love that. I just like the visual of that. And you were talking about, roughly 264 million people on the planet having depression on somewhere along the spectrum, right? And that is only of who we know about.
And
we have to know about it first.
Statistic was before the pandemic.
Right. But plus, it doesn't get in the database unless somebody goes to a counselor or the ER or whatever. So imagine all the people walking around. Yeah. Right. So that's all we know of. And I think of, just the population of Vermont was like 600,000 or something. Yeah. So the whole state of Vermont would be depressed. Plus, if you do a visual across if we just stay with the United States, even not even go, you know what I mean? That is just an insane amount of people, not enjoying their lives and their life minutes, right? Not enjoy, and it's just very unnecessarily so, because there's so much that we can do.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think, and again, associating, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, but again, what is happiness? And happiness, like Eleanor Roosevelt said, happiness is a byproduct of fulfilling life or a purpose and meaning. So the question going back to spirituality as it relates to meaning and purpose, so closely entwined and connected. And I think when having sometimes a sense of your belief in who you are, and coming also with this sense of you can't control everything.
Right. It's an illusion, really.
It's an illusion.
Right.
So certainly there's a top-down and a bottom-up way of making decisions. And I think it was Dr. Berman from University of Chicago that did research on decision-making, top-down, very achievement-oriented, versus bottom-up, allowing things more to happen naturally. So certainly we live in a dynamic life where you can't just sit in a chair and let life happen to you, right? You have to interact and you have to communicate and be in concert with life on a dynamic sense, making things happen. But there are certain things that we have to allow from kind of a heart-centered or intuitive-centered side to allow these events and other things and people and events to come into our lives. So there's that part of you can't do it on your own.
No.
100%. We talk oftentimes about surrender in a way like I really don't know what my next step is going to be. It's going to appear somehow.
The next move, right?
My next move, it will appear.
Like in the 12-step programs, they say let go and let God, and sometimes people get confused that means like that's in a defeated sense, and it's not that at all. It's an allowing. Allowing, yeah. So that the receptive stage can happen, right? Ask, allow, receive, right? Like I picture like a catcher's mitt without the baseball. Like you gotta be if like the baseball glove is full of baseballs and not one can't get in.
Yeah.
You kind of
Can't
got to
take
be,
anymore, right.
you got to kind of clear it out, right, and be in receptive mode, and to surrender
And I
it.
think it's kind of an antithesis of what a lot of young people feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no. I was taught to achieve. I was taught to, again, get good grades, be athletically, a prowess in athleticism or music or arts or whatever that is. I have to achieve. And it's when you can take a step back
Yes.
and allow, like, what is my next step? So back to purpose and meaning, to have a spiritual sense of helping with that direction. What is feeling right? Where am I meant to be and where am I meant to go? Using all of my skills, talents, and other attributes that I possess, how can I be the best for others?
And what is my next move?
And what is my
right?
next move? Allow that to happen. And I have folks who are, I wouldn't say, I think have a strong spiritual sense, but maybe nothing in organized religion or any type of, but have said to me, yeah, once I did, quote unquote, surrender, then everything started to happen for the
it's so
right reason. I
true.
wasn't following what I was told or I feel I should do through parents and friends, and but what I was meant to do. And that
That
again,
one thing that we were put on this earth to do, right? Which can change as we move along, right?
Yeah.
But that one thing, and it's about listening.
Yeah.
I know we're going to get into synchronicity. We'll do a little plug here for our next
All right,
episode.
yes.
Because in watching for the green lights, and my good friend Tom here has been talking about green lights for a very long time. I know Matt McConaughey just kicked out a book, but you've been talking about this forever.
Yeah.
We putting it out there like it is. If you say the universe, just putting out what's my next move, asking, right? What's my next move? What's my next move? And then the listening part with, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, because you and I talk about this a lot, when we are authentically in the place of paying attention to the inner voice, the green lights, as you call them, the directions start to just show up.
Yeah. And it's a really good point, because people say, oh, yeah, I listen. I listen all the time for what my next move is. I don't hear anything. I don't know what to do, right? And it's the highest level of communication is not through a spoken word. It's through emotions and feeling.
Right.
So the green lights, right? If it just feels right. Like, I'm going in this direction. I don't know where it's leading me, but you know what?
feels
Emotionally,
right, yeah.
it feels right. It's bringing me joy. It's bringing me satisfaction. I'm, again, we've talked a lot in the past about going into that flow state. Putting you into that flow state where things just naturally begin to flow without effort. Like, oh my gosh, things are just coming at me,
Flow
right?
state.
So it's feeling, and I know that we can, through different prayer practices, meditation, many other things of listening to the universe,
Quieting the mind.
Quieting
is
the
what we're talking
mind.
about, right?
So it may not always be in written word or spoken word or that a whisper you hear in your head. It's what feeling, emotionally and visceral feeling, are you getting from this?
100%. 100%.
And I
Don't a
know
lot of
if
people say this?
Right, and I don't know if enough people trust that. I think cognitively, as humans, we've got to, we think logically, and we think from, again, an intellectual standpoint. No, I've got to prove it to my brain to make me understand. I can't trust my gut. So there's so much more back as it relates to spirituality, as it relates to this, communication with the universe. That's where you're going to be getting these feelings, and you're going to be getting this direction.
Oh, you could help me out with this, Tom, because you led me right to it. That if you want to make the universe laugh, tell her your plans.
Yeah.
I mean, because we get so wrapped up in this illusion of control, right? Where we've got to, like you said, we're very conditioned, kind of like gerbils on crack, flying around. Yeah, I've got to do, got to accomplish, got to check every box in the world. Like a blur, not present in this moment whatsoever, just like a blur. When the reverse is what we really need to do, to hear the direction. It takes a lot less out of us. It sounds so counterintuitive, but when we actually step back, it's a situation of energy over hours. That's how I like to say it.
Yeah.
The big sky look over the box checking.
Yeah, and again, it's that human desire to control.
Right.
That human desire, and yeah. So there's a lot there's a lot there on the spirituality side, both from a psychological, a physiological, and a social
Right.
and emotional piece.
I can't just, because I live, you and I both live our lives this way. I get some of my best, thinking done, but actually my best listening done is really what I want to say, out in the woods. And it's just and certainly some days are more fluid on channeling things better than other days. But wow, I mean, you just realize when you really get quiet and listen, it's like a floodgate.
Yeah, and
Do this, do that, go this way. It's like neon lights in Vegas, go this way.
And it's when you can unplug, right?
You got to unplug.
You're not getting those external stimuli that are coming at us at all times and telling us what to do or what we should be or how we should be or where we should go. I mean, it's really, and that's so important as part of a spiritual focus or spiritual practice is quieting the mind.
Got to quiet the mind. And I think I like this to say too, as a member of the Fast Mind Club, which I talk about a lot. It's important, I think, for folks to realize too, because a lot of times when people say quiet the mind or relax, they're making an assumption that you have to be in a lotus position with your palms up in a cave eating yogurt or something. And for those of us, we all relax, just like we have different movie tastes, different whatever tastes. Personally, I relax in motion. Sitting down watching a movie is in no way relaxing for me. Or sitting in general is no way relaxing for me, not really, unless it's maybe in isolated circumstances. But skiing in the woods, running, hiking, if I'm moving, or actually even doing Tai Chi, that is when I am tapped in, tuned in, turned on, as Abraham Hicks would say. Fully present. Especially if I'm whipping down the woods and the trees, because you have to be present or you're going to hit one, right? But I'm fully present. I mean, it just comes right to me. I think it's important for folks to know that we're not saying go sit in a corner someplace. You can do that if you have a nice room and space, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of we as human beings, is that whatever works best for us.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's not one size fits all or prescribed, this is the method you must follow in order. No. But and you hit on something really, really important. It's like, how do you put yourself into a sense of presence?
Right,
the here and now.
Dropping in, as John Kabat-Zinn would say, dropping in at any time, even if you're at work, close the door for 3 minutes. 3 minutes better than no minutes. And do a check-in, like how am I doing right now? And just close your eyes.
Yep.
Right?
And it's because it's when you're in that state of presence, not worrying or ruminating about the past, nor are you thinking about what's the next step in my future and worrying about the future as well. But even in a short period of time of just without judgment, focusing on what you're doing right now.
That's the key, is the no judgment.
No judgment. And to be in a state of presence. And at that point is when those messages, that whispering, if you will, or that feeling, that's to allow, if you will, a divine or a higher power or the universe, Mother Nature, however you define it, this spiritual presence will come into your life and begin to give you the information that you need at that time.
Oh, totally. Or even reveal, right? Because it's already there. We just get so wrapped up in all the distractions, right? Our inner, true, authentic self might have slid over to the passenger side or the back seat, but she or he or they, or they're there. They're just kind of waiting for the invite.
Yep.
Exactly. to surface, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. This has been so enlightening, Tom. And what do you think you would say? Because Tom's got a ton of expertise in this area. To our listeners, as far as maybe some kind of positive. What do we do with this now? Yeah. Now that we have this knowledge, or let's just say, because there are parents of young adults out there listening to of our young adults listening, and grandparents are listening. I have a few of my Champlain parents groups that are grandparents. And then we've got professors listening, and we've got staff listening, all whom work with young adults. What do you think you would say about spirituality and sort of where to go from here?
Yeah, it's always good to have something to leave with, right? And in all of my teaching education workshops that I've done, you always want to leave with a nugget, 2, 3 nuggets, right? So I think the first thing to do is to figure out what works for you in terms of a spiritual practice. To know that it is a very powerful presence. It's very, very powerful, and that there is a force there that is there to remember that it's there to help you, right? It's just there to support you, to give you guidance, however you define it, as we keep saying.
Mm-hmm.
But define what works for you, and then begin that practice if you can. If it's going for a walk by yourself, or it's going to the woods, or going to
Gratitude journaling, maybe.
Gratitude journaling, certainly to give thanks for all that you have, and then more will come.
Right.
So that's not the whole intention, but to understand all that you do have and all that you do possess. I think having a strong sense of who you are, your spiritual practice, what do you bring in terms of your strengths, and what do you bring, given your personality and your experience. Everyone has these amazing strengths, and it's to help find those strengths. So the spiritual practice, to know that there is a presence that is looking out for you, that you can tap into that, understanding who you are and your strengths. And I would say too, boy, during this coming out of the pandemic, and certainly the college age students, we've become so isolated, and so to have a group of friends, or even one friend, someone that you can be connecting with, and don't go it alone. I think being alone for long periods of time, or even short, but being alone has that sense of loneliness, and you lose a sense of reality of who you are.
Totally.
You no longer have that feedback with friends and family who can tell you, no, you're on the right, you're okay, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
It becomes incredibly divergent about who you feel you are after a while, without having that connection with people.
We are just not wired to be alone.
Yeah.
Even if somebody's introverted, it might be a different level of stimulation, right? But we are not meant to fly solo.
Right.
We're just not.
And we talked in my classes, you talk about the kiss of death, or to be early humans and being outcast from your group. I mean, you need to be in concert. You need to be a part of a community in order to survive, if you're going to be hunted. Literally.
Yeah.
And the greatest punishment in the world is to be outcast on your own. Both from a social, but also from a survival standpoint. You will die.
Right. And the analogy there, or metaphor, or whatever, is good, because we do die inside.
Yeah.
When we're, even babies in orphanages, if they're not touched for so long, they actually literally die. It's awful.
Yeah. So those are the 3 things. Again, find out you have a spiritual practice, if it's just meditation or whatever. Understanding who you are and your strengths, and then being in community.
There you go.
And interconnectivity among us is just vital as humans.
That divine connection that connects us, just like awesome. I love it. Well, I think this is probably a good spot to plug our next one too. So I want to thank the entire Champlain College wave riding community. And also, I was asked to let everybody know that you can hear this as well on the Mindcraft, that's mind with a D, as in brain, Mindcraft YouTube channel. You can type Kimberly Quinn in there. I think that would work too. And our next segment is going to kind of pick up where we left off, kind of pass the torch, talk about synchronicity. Is that right, Tom?
Yeah, and I think we're going to continue on, the spirituality in this series is going to be wended through each of our podcasts.
Nice.
It's a very important part. So we're going to move into a little bit about synchronicity, and then also mentioned about belonging, the sense of belonging and being in community, and how important that is for spirituality, meaning, and purpose.
Which we kind of touched on too. So we're gonna take those nuggets, as Tom called them, and we're gonna run with them for a phenomenal sort of sequel to what we talked about today. So thank you for listening.